Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me respond to the Minister of Trade very briefly and deal with the 55 minutes of rambling of numbers that I must ask. What does all that numbers mean to the single mother who is struggling this morning? What does all that numbers mean to the small businessman who cannot get $200 in the bank to buy anything on Amazon or anywhere to support his business? What does all that numbers that has been rattled out mean to the small businessman who's been extorted by gang members? What does all that numbers that has been rattled out mean to the struggling families who cannot get a job, who are grappling with unemployment? Well, I tell Honorable Minister that it means little or nothing to those people who are trying to eke out a living on a daily basis, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today with a profound sense of duty and responsibility, not only to the people of Mayaro, but to the wider citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago. I wish to thank the wonderful and kind people of the Mayaro constituency who have had the pleasure of serving and representing in this parliament, and who I suspect I will continue to serve with passion and humility as long as they would have me. Madam Speaker, I will continue to uphold the finest tradition of honesty and decency in my public and in my private life as long as I hold this office. In my 9 years as a representative in this parliament, I have been very careful to ensure that my office has never been dragged into a place it should not be, whether in the day or the night. I wear this badge, Madam Speaker, with pride as a husband, a father, a son, and the many other roles that I hold for so many people. Madam Speaker, I remain resolute and steadfast in my objective of making Trinidad and Tobago the gem that I know it can be. Our job on this side of the Parliament, Madam Speaker, is not to rubber stamp this government, but to scrutinize and offer serious, well-meaning suggestions for their consideration to make Trinidad and Tobago a better place. It is not like if we're not on the same boat, Madam Speaker. We're all on the same ship. But if they fail to do so, if they fail to take the comments and the commentary and the suggestions that we who are scrutinizing their policies and plans, well then they will fail and they will end in political demise, and they will make way for serious people who are ready to do the job of governance in Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I begin I wouldn't call it an attack, but a serious view on the bill that was presented by the Finance Minister, I feel compelled to address a matter that has been weighing heavily on my heart over this weekend. I wish to express deepest condolences to the family of young Jayen Lalchan, a former student of St. Stephen's College, who tragically passed away. As a proud student of St. Stephen's College myself, Madam Speaker, this news hit particularly close to home. The bond I share with the institution, its values, and the community it represents makes the loss all the more personal. Jayen was a bright, promising student, and his untimely death, allegedly stemming from the horrendous act of bullying, reminds us of the urgent need to protect our children and create environments where they feel safe, valued, and supported. His passing, Madam Speaker, should serve as a wake-up call for all of us, especially in addressing the pressing issue of bullying in our schools. To Jayen's parents, Rushton and Farida Lalchan, I offer my deepest sympathies. I cannot imagine the depth of your pain, and my thoughts and prayers are with you at this time of grief. We must ensure that no family endures such a tragedy again, Madam Speaker. May Jayen's soul rest in peace, and may his memory inspire us to make the necessary changes to protect the lives and futures of our nation's children. Madam Speaker, as we navigate the difficult realities of our time, it is essential to recognize that the budget, though cloaked in the hopeful language of steadfast and resolute forging pathways to prosperity, this remains yet another document of missed opportunities and unrealized potential. It signifies that our country's leadership is unable to make that crucial shift from ideas to purpose, from purpose to action, and from action to delivery. Madam Speaker, after $500 billion plus in 9 years in governance, if they haven't figured out how to do it by now, I do not believe they will figure out how to do it again. While the minister's budget speech might win an award for best fiction, Madam Speaker, the review of the economy 2024 offers a front row view of the disastrous trajectory this administration is leading us on under the misguided leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister and his Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, while the government speaks of progress, growth, prosperity, the people are feeling sharp edges of economic hardship. And it is our responsibility to be the voice of those concerns. Madam Speaker, these are very challenging times for our nation. Our citizens are under siege by record levels of crime. Our economy is in intensive care. There is lower consumer confidence, low local investor confidence, low foreign direct investment, and an overwhelming sense by everyone that things are not going to get better. Madam Speaker, given these challenges, it speaks to the callous and brazen nature of this government that the Minister of Finance would have the audacity to present to the people of Trinidad and Tobago a most visionless, a most uninspiring budget in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, over the last 9 years, this government has waged an unprecedented assault on every sector of our economy. The government has presided over the decline of every economic indicator known to mankind, Madam Speaker. Everyone has deteriorated. They have weakened our energy sector by banking on baskets of eggs in foul belly, Madam Speaker. They have undermined our small and medium-sized businesses, neglected our agricultural and tourism sectors. And they have allowed a crime wave to transform itself into a tsunami that is targeting the very fabric that is desperately attempting to keep our country together. You see, Madam Speaker, Budget 2025, it truly is an assault on the collective imagination of every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. It is an attempt by the government to tell the people of this country, stop dreaming of a better life. Stop imagining a better future for your child. Stop believing that our country could be safer, could be more prosperous, and that you could be happier. Madam Speaker, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, they are not fools. I know that my country should be a place where children should not have to worry if they can go to school and not be shot or stabbed. I know my country should be a place where small businessmen trying to work hard are not extorted by criminal gangs. My country should not be a place where young people feel that they need to migrate to get a decent job, or the ones outside, they don't want to come back home, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I, nor any other citizen of this land, will ever stop believing in the vision of a better Trinidad and Tobago. The people of this country must reject the idea that we must accept mediocrity as our new normal. Madam Speaker, the Minister in her delivery, she spoke briefly on inflation and ultimately referring to the cost of living. But Madam Speaker, the Minister celebrated this inflation of 0.3%, but I must ask, as I asked in the opening, what relevance does this figure have to the ordinary family struggling to make ends meet? The Minister may find comfort in these statistics, all of them, but the people of Trinidad and Tobago are feeling the strain of rising costs, Madam Speaker. In an article in the Trinidad Express recently, they revealed that food prices, and this is the food index, has gone up by over 15% in the last 2 years. Madam Speaker, families are being forced to make impossible choices. They are forcing themselves to decide whether we should pay for groceries or we should pay for school fees. Madam Speaker, that is not prosperity. That is hardship. And while the Minister celebrates the inflation figures, there's a book that was supplied to us called the Review of the Economy 2024, Madam Speaker, which states clearly as a warning, rising inflation risk driven by pressures including increasing energy costs and higher electricity tariffs are coming. Now, Madam Speaker, this is not the member for Siparia that write this. This is the officers of the central bank, I suppose, and the Ministry of Finance have written this book. So they are the experts. I'm going with what they are saying. Madam Speaker, these factors, as identified, will only push the cost of living into a crisis mode. Yet the budget, as delivered by the Minister of Finance, spoke of no real solutions to mitigate these risks. Instead of focusing on policies that would support local food production, the government continues to rely on food imports, which keeps prices high, Madam Speaker, but accessibility very low. Over the past 9 years, Trinidad and Tobago's business climate, Madam Speaker, has significantly worsened under this administration. And it can be evidenced by what the global organizations who are looking into Trinidad and Tobago, what they're saying. And I'll just quote a few of those. Under the ease of doing business, we still ranked at somewhere around 105, 106, somewhere there. But it is the commentary that comes with the ranking, Madam Speaker. They said that Trinidad and Tobago continues to struggle with bureaucratic inefficiencies in starting businesses, securing permits, and accessing credit. Madam Speaker, the Global Competitive Index, they says that the country faces gaps in innovation, technological readiness, and business dynamism, lacking diversification beyond energy. Now, this is a sharp contrast to what we now heard the Honorable Minister of Trade spoke about. Madam Speaker, the Global Innovation Group, they claim that Trinidad and Tobago remains mid-tier due to limited research, infrastructure, and human capital focus, stifling growth. Foreign direct investment, Madam Speaker, FDI, remains inconsistent and energy reliant. So we're getting some investment, but we're going down still at this one-trick pony called oil and gas. And they believe that not sufficient efforts are being made by the state in terms of its policy direction to improve the bandwidth and the variety of foreign direct investments coming to Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the Economic Freedom, which is the Heritage Foundation, they ranked us 97 as well. And they claim that high government spending, heavy regulations, and inefficiencies hinder business activities. And then we have the old elephant in the room, Madam Speaker, corruption. Transparency International, they still comment that corruption remains a significant barrier, undermining investor confidence due to a lack of action on transparency. Madam Speaker, overall inefficiencies, corruption, a lack of strategic reforms have weakened Trinidad and Tobago's global standing, making the business environment challenging and unattractive to investors with missed opportunities. Madam Speaker, the Minister also spoke a bit about foreign exchange. I want to place on the record that foreign exchange is, and it is going to continue to be, one of the crises in our economy. And when you listen to the Minister in his budget presentation, there was no real policy to deal with that. And what is our role here? Our role here is to scrutinize policy. I don't have access to all the 10,000 bits of data that the Minister came with. But we could look at policy from an objective and a subjective way and figure out how it is going to affect the man on the street. Now, Madam Speaker, the Minister, he boasted of a $5.5 billion reserve in terms of our U.S. reserve, which is good. Could be better, but it's good. But why, as reported, 70% of SMEs, they have over a 3-month delay to get foreign exchange from the commercial banks? Now, this affects businesses in Mayaro, fishermen, or small agro-processors, retailers. They are struggling because of this. Now, half of them can't get foreign currency through the Exim Bank, and they are at the mercy of commercial banks. Madam Speaker, there was a lot of talk about special economic zones. But according to the review of the economy, net foreign direct investment outflows reached US $1.6 billion. Out. This is not the opposition saying this, Madam Speaker. This is the review of the economy, the experts who are looking at these things. What does that tell me is that our investors lack the confidence in their ability to get a fair return on their investment if they put their money in Trinidad. And capital is coward. In business, Madam Speaker, we say capital is coward. It is going to go to a place where it has the least amount of risk with the best returns. Now, instead of encouraging export growth and supporting SMEs, the government seems to favor large corporations, leaving local small businesses sidelined. And I say that in context that there is no clearly defined policy as stated in the 2024-25 budget. Madam Speaker, there is an absolute disconnect between the government and their approach to trade and investment. The trade and investment proposals are, again, in my view, a bit lofty, and at times, because of the drip-down effect, I am not seeing the connection to businesses on the lower end, the smaller end, more so those that are operating within rural communities like the one that I serve. The minister highlighted initiatives like the Trade Investment Promotion Agency, TIPA, the Special Economic Zones and Exim Banks, Forex windows for manufacturers. Now, Madam Speaker, these measures sound progressive. I absolutely understand what the government wants to do, but I think their failure is in handling. The government's failure is in the environment that these agencies have to operate in. I think that is where the failure is. The state is not giving these agencies the best possible chance of success. Madam Speaker, one must really ask, when we consolidate these agencies, are we trying to improve the outcome? Or are we just trying to rebrand it and make it look better and, jump on a plane and fly to 75 places when the year comes? Madam Speaker, despite everything the Minister of Trade said here earlier this morning, and the numbers sound good, I am not arguing with those numbers, we continue to rank poorly. Why? If we are doing such a fantastic job, why are we ranking poorly? Common things, Madam Speaker, bureaucratic red tape, slow approvals, opaque regulations are still the experiences that businesses bounce up every day. So the rhetoric doesn't match the reality, and the government's inability to address these barriers will continue to hinder meaningful progress in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, as we go on, I want to talk a bit on this whole issue of diversification. It's a whipping horse that has been whipped for the last 9 years. But the Minister of Finance, when he spoke, he continues to paint a rosy picture of economic resilience and growth, particularly within the non-energy sector. Well, the Minister of Trade came and she spoke lovingly about all the non-energy sector areas that are doing well. Like the Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister, touted the same 2.5% growth in 2023 and an anticipated 2.2% growth in 2024. But how can we honestly speak of resilience when our economy remains shackled to the volatility of the global energy markets, Madam Speaker? We are still heavily dependent on oil and gas. And despite 9 years of repeated promises to diversify, the government has achieved virtually nothing, Madam Speaker. Nothing. For example, and I want to quote the review of the economy again. This is not the UNC, this is not the member for Saparia saying this. This is the experts at the Central Bank or the Ministry of Finance who write this book. Madam Speaker, according to the review, in 2023, and I heard the Minister of Trade say some other figures, I don't know where those figures came from, but this is what this book says. Trinidad and Tobago's balance of trade with CARICOM, which is one of our most closest and competitive markets, shrunk, plummeted by 35.2%. We moved from $10 billion to $6.5 billion. That is in contrast to what the Honorable Minister said a little while ago. But I'm taking it from the review of the economy. So what does that tell me, Madam Speaker? It tells me the stark decline exposes, I hope falsehood is a parliamentary word, behind the minister's claim that the non-energy sector is seeing some progress. The truth is, the government has failed, in my respectful view, to implement any meaningful long-term strategy to diversify our economy. Madam Speaker, the PNM came into government in 2015 on a platform of diversifying our economy away from the reliance of the energy sector. Yet after 9 years, that promise, amongst others, is still not fulfilled. In the early years of this administration, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance champion, sing, dance. You could see clearly now, 10 pillars of diversification, nothing to show for it up to today. But you have to give credit to the Minister of Finance. He has perfected the art of recycling old promises with new phrases, and yet the results are non-existent. Madam Speaker, we do not need to revisit any of the other alarming statistics in energy outputs. I think the member for Point-a-Pier did a fantastic job in dealing with that when he spoke. But every year, there is a greater need to move our economy away from this dependence on energy. Yet each year, the minister drifts further and further and further and further away. In the last budget speech, the minister leaned heavily. The Honorable Minister today spoke a bit about the economic zones and these bilateral trade agreements with Curaçao and Ghana and some of these other places. But Madam Speaker, special economic zones are still in their infancy, and they cannot be expected to deliver large-scale economic impacts overnight. So despite these bleak circumstances, I want to give our manufacturers the kudos that they deserve. Madam Speaker, the manufacturers in this country have showed resilience, innovation, and a commitment to growth despite all the issues that I've spoken about. So they must be commended. They must be commended for the work that they continue to do. But as I mentioned, they are hampered by the very same environment that the state is failing to secure and enable. High utility costs, low productivity, bureaucratic red tape, shipping delays, and the ever more present crime crisis that is curtailing the movement of employees, customers, and so on. Madam Speaker, the government speaks about Phoenix Park, the Piaco Aero Park as major economic alternatives. I have no doubt when these facilities come on stream sometime in the future, they can make an impact to our overall economic fortunes. But there has been nothing new. I have been hearing about these things 3, 4, 5 years, and the speed at which it should be going is just not there, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our maritime sector, the financial industry, creative arts, all of which were promised as pillars of diversification, I feel they may have been tossed as afterthoughts now, Madam Speaker. Leave them on their own. But if you're leaving them on their own, what new are you coming with? What new are you putting in on track to excite this country, to excite our people, that we have something to look for when the day comes? Madam Speaker, if I were to draw your attention to an incident during the Hurricane Beryl, it demonstrated a strategic importance for our maritime industry in Northwest Trinidad. But because of the government's archaic bureaucracy, it hindered us from capitalizing on a potential. Madam Speaker, would you believe that Yachonas were fleeing the storm from all over the Caribbean, heading to 10 degrees north latitude, just 2 degrees below the hurricane belt. And they had to line up, like on the Sir Solomon Hood, try to fill out a paper form just to enter our waters, Madam Speaker. That is something that we could have addressed years and years ago. These are the kind of things, Madam Speaker, that is hampering our ability to drive our diversification. Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, has a unique opportunity to leverage our maritime sector for key economic diversification beyond oil and gas. But I am telling you that this potential, it's going to remain untapped, unchecked under this present administration. Madam Speaker, with our strategic location outside of the hurricane belt, we have naturally deep water ports. Trinidad and Tobago is ideally positioned to become a regional maritime hub. But, Madam Speaker, do you know this conversation about the maritime sector has been bandied about under Prime Minister Manning 16 years ago? And up to today, we haven't figured it out as yet. Madam Speaker, as we go along, this maritime industry is a big area that we need to pursue, and I trust that the government will continue to push forward. Madam Speaker, as time goes on, I want to talk just briefly about digital transformation. I do shadow that ministry, and I have been looking at what the ministry has been doing, how digital transformation has been going through the public sector, and some issues that I believe we need to address if we have to play catch up. Madam Speaker, over the last decade, Trinidad and Tobago has fallen behind in digital transformation, particularly so in the public sector, because in the private sector, we are moving fast ahead. In private sector, business, engineering companies and so on, you are seeing the movement towards AI and so on, but we're not seeing the movement that we ought to be having in the public sector. So when you look back at the initiatives like the National ICT Plan 2018-2022, providing government e-services, the country continues to struggle with inconsistent implementation, outdated systems, and more so over the last year, Madam Speaker, poor cybersecurity infrastructure. We have gotten hit several times, and that's just the ones that makes the newspaper. Key digital services, Madam Speaker, remain inefficient compared to global standards, and cybersecurity efforts have been insufficient in the face of rising crime. One of the major failures that I can talk to you about, Madam Speaker, is the government's failure to adopt the Budapest Convention on cybercrime. What that has done is isolate us from getting the best international cooperation needed to combating the growing threat of cybercrime. Why have we not done that? That has been before us for years, Madam Speaker. Now, because of that, because of these instances of cybercrime, this has left the public vulnerable, undermining public trust in digital services, and it's going to stun the growth in the digital economy because people wouldn't trust the system, Madam Speaker. Again, if I were to refer your attention to the Review of the Economy 2024, it highlights delays in key projects like the National EID system, poor progress in digital infrastructure, especially in rural areas. And this is where it touches me the most, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, global indices such as the UN E-Development Index and the World Bank Digital Adoption Index, they reveal that Trinidad and Tobago's declining global standing in digital development is trailing behind our regional partners like Barbados and Jamaica. Why are we behind? We used to be in front of everything. In 1998, the LA Times, Madam Speaker, they described Trinidad as a tiger in a sea of pussycats. Look where we are today. We're behind every single thing in the region. Madam Speaker, urgent reforms are needed to catch up with global standards. When the minister speaks of public sector reform, there is no clear strategy. And there's no clear strategy in the budget that was presented. And we'll continue to be inefficient, and we're going to be plagued with wastages in the public service for many, many years to come if we don't take immediate action. Madam Speaker, again, the newspaper writes about these things in an editorial in the Express this year. They complain, there was an article, where public servants feel that they are overwhelmed by the bureaucracy and the old systems are slowing them down. You know, the best example of that, Madam Speaker, is this line up to play property tax. You know, I believe in this country, or in any country, you must never line up to pay money. You must line up to receive money. But to pay money, you're supposed to be able to roll off your bed in your pajamas and drop it somewhere, if the state really wants money. We could have put systems, put bins in commercial places, write your check, put your thing, drop it in a bin, walk in front of the warden office and drop it in, if you are paying via check. Why we had to stand up in the hot sun to pay money? Madam Speaker, digital transformation is a process that has to happen if we want to see improvement in government service. And I'll tell you this as well, Madam Speaker. The movement of digital service, it creates a space for good decentralization of government services, Madam Speaker. And that has the ability to solve a lot of problems outside of the digitalization. I'll just talk briefly on that. So, Madam Speaker, I've read about a concept of something called intelligent municipalities. And it envisions a decentralized model where government services are relocated from central hubs like Port of Spain into municipal regional districts, complexes, making these services more accessible to citizens. So you're using IT, you're using AI, you're using automation. But this is what it does. Madam Speaker, there are benefits from that. Local staff, or young public officers who are leaving Tabaquite, leaving Brothers Road, Mayaro to Port of Spain, they can work in their local municipalities. That enhances the quality of life for young public officers. They can look after their children. They don't have to have a nanny to make breakfast in the morning, somebody to do homework in the evening. They can get to work, they can get home on time to strengthen family, which is something that is, you know, it's been pressured today with the lifestyles that we have today in the current situation. Madam Speaker, decentralization via digitalization can reduce traffic congestion. It has a huge environmental impact. And well, we are burning so much gas to head into Port of Spain and San Fernando, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, citizens can access multiple government services in one place. So I go to the passport office in Rio Claro, the man tell my name smell bad. I walk down and I go by the JP, he sign up the paper, he tell me walk by the next office, pay the fee, and I come back by the immigration officer, right in Rio Claro. I don't need to take more than 1 day to do all of that. So there are benefits outside of just pure digitalization. When you build these regional complexes, Madam Speaker, look, another good feature. Right now, vendors are fighting with store owners in front of the place for space. The municipal police harasses vendors to move from in front, so there's conflict. If we build these campuses and these complexes in our regional corporations and we move these vendors to these areas, they now have traffic, they now have a market, they don't have to fight with the store owners, they don't have to fight with the municipal police. They have a market, they can sell their goods, it's a high traffic area because everybody goes for government services when the day come, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to show how that in itself helps quite a bit in terms of moving our digital infrastructure. So then one person, when I was discussing, said, what will you do with Port of Spain? If we decentralize everything from Port of Spain, what happens? Well, we get smarter, right? We turn Port of Spain into the cultural and entertainment capital of the world, of the Caribbean. Let's move cargo to Point Lisas, to Point Fortin, send them down to Galeota. Let's put 5 cruise ships, docks in Port of Spain, use the waterfront. Get our artisan, small vendors, art and craft people to work. Get them into downtown Port of Spain, fix our museum, our zoo, our botanical gardens. Let's create a product that the world wants to come and visit, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we solve the problem. We solve the problem of this unemployment boogie. Madam Speaker, as we go on, as the time is going, I just want to touch quickly on agriculture. The minister spoke for 5 hours and 12 minutes, I think it was. And agriculture was reduced to a single paragraph. Mere tax exemption without any strategic vision for the sector's transformation, as late as it would be. But Madam Speaker, rural constituencies like Mayaro, agriculture and fishing should thrive. Yet they are so neglected that the sector contributes, the whole sector, less than 1% of our GDP. And you know what, Madam Speaker? We have a fisheries bill that is laid down somewhere in a drawer in this parliament, I don't know where, for the last year or two. And this bill will address a number of the problems that are holding back the fishing sector. And I hope that bill comes in this year, this legislative year, that we can deal with it. But despite the rhetoric of this $7.3 billion food import bill, which is the highest in our history, Madam Speaker, and I understand is the highest in the whole region, what is odd? CARICOM neighbors like Guyana, Barbados, Jamaica, they are all making strides. We signed an agreement 2 years ago, Madam Speaker, to reduce food import to the region by 25%. I have it on good information that we participate in nothing in the last 2 years.
What?
We have been lazy to even report to the CARICOM Secretariat of what measures that we've been making. So are we serious? Are we serious on this issue of driving this $7.3 billion food bill? Madam Speaker, I looked at the review of the economy as well, and I saw some data in terms of our vegetable and fruit production. You're looking at 25% reduction in the production of vegetables, 33% in the reduction in pineapples. Minister talked a little while ago, Madam Speaker, about finding poultry to send to Curacao, but our poultry record is in diminishing returns here. And then just recently, we had the state threatening to knock down a poultry farm with about 15,000 chicken in it. So how do you make that make sense of how we want to operate? Find a market in Curacao, but we don't have enough chicken for we. But we're knocking down farms. Madam Speaker, these are things that, as a member of parliament who is serving a rural community, and when you have to explain why things are how they are, Madam Speaker, we need to have more collaboration, we need to have more farmer training, we need to have private sector hold handing with some of our farmers if the extension units of the ministry can't do it. We must address the issues of perennial larceny. We must address the issue of a reliable water supply. We must leverage international expertise to deal with the issues of climate resilient crops. These things are coming. Freshwater security. All of these things ought to be huge policy positions that we ought to be articulating from now. Whether it's 2 years down the road, 4 years down the road, we have to address, we have to confront these things, Madam Speaker, and it is not there as any part of any policy.
Member, you have 2 minutes of ordinary speaking time left. You have 10 additional minutes available to you if you wish to complete your presentation. So you're going to use the additional 10 minutes? Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have to revitalize our coconut and cocoa industry. In the minister's budget presentation, he spoke about this 900 acres of coconut on the East Coast. Madam Speaker, I drive that East Coast every day, and I'm still trying to find that 900 acres of coconut that we're trying to rehabilitate. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that the farmers in Mayaro, we do have the potential to drive meaningful change. All they need is a government that is willing to invest in their future. With a genuine vision, Madam Speaker, to support the agricultural sector, I think our farmers in Mayaro, that's the constituency of Mayaro, can be on the forefront of national development. The time for all these empty promises is going fastly, Madam Speaker, and the state must act now. Madam Speaker, let me talk quickly about job creation, and there's a crisis of youth employment. The data as presented by the minister, he says, is 5.4%. In my arrow, Madam Speaker, the unemployment rate is tipping over 11% in my arrow. And what is amazing is the percentage of that is youth unemployment. And that has a psychological effect on the future of our country, Madam Speaker. So this review of the economy 2024, you know what it said, Madam Speaker? That youth unemployment nationwide stands at 25%. And in one quarter alone, it went up to 31.7%. Madam Speaker, that is a review of the economy, so I'm taking it word for word. So, Madam Speaker, when you have this level of youth unemployment, that is nothing short of a national crisis. You know what it is to spend 5 years in university and come home and sit down and watch your neighbor's son, short pants, 2 gold chain, he ain't walking nowhere now. But he moving like a big boy. But you now sacrifice 5 years, your mother and father stop eating, drinking, going on holiday, so they could pay your school fees. And you can't get a job. As an MP, we are limited to looking to see where OGT could offer a job, and there's only so much that they can do. So that is something that we have to address head on. How are we going to move? Well, you're the government. You're the government. When we change, I'm going to tell you how to do it. Madam Speaker, sorry about that. The minister speaks about job creation, and we need to find a sustainable way to do it. And, you know, if we push our diversification, you know, as we talk about decentralization, you know, the issues around, you know, agriculture, we can find the jobs. You can find the good jobs, the sustainable jobs for our young people. But if it is not in a policy, we can't turn action, ideas, deliverables. Madam Speaker, and we go on. So, Madam Speaker, in the few remaining minutes that I have, I want to talk specifically now on this issue of crime, because it is hitting everyone. It is turning wonderful, beautiful constituencies like Mayaro, that has always been a place of rest and relaxation, a place you come with your family to feel safer. And slowly, that is changing. Madam Speaker, people of Trinidad and Tobago, we are indeed living in fear. Everywhere you go to temple, you go to mosque, you go to prayers, there is this question about crime and why isn't the government getting a handle on it. Madam Speaker, crime has escalated into very, very terrifying levels. I took note that the Honourable Member for Port of Spain South has put some actions in place in terms of getting these joint patrols, these joint task force, to get outside there and get some work done. But it's not only about 12 boats that I think the minister said we're going to buy, 2,000 vehicles over 3 years. We are not addressing operational issues in the police service, operational issues in forensics, operational issues in the prisons, operational issues in the judiciary. If we can convince the public that swift justice is around the corner, we will not improve trust. And if we don't improve trust in our law enforcement, no matter what we do, I don't think we are going to make a dent in crime in any way. Madam Speaker, illegal guns. Illegal guns is what is driving the gun-related murder crime. I think we are over 500 today, I think. But the approach has to be proactive, not reactive, which is what's happening now. So we can't stop the guns on the high seas because we are no boat. We can't stop the guns on the port because the scanners are working. So what we are doing? We have to find them in the homes where they're sitting. And my understanding is between 1 and 4 in the morning, the gun and drugs not in the house, it's across the road by the fig patch. So you have to be smart where you go and look for it because they bring it back 5 o'clock in the morning. If we can't catch them in the house, they are moving in motorcar to somewhere to put on a crime. So we have to attack them there. And if we can't catch them in the car, They're walking with it on their side, gallantly on the streets, walking with it bravely. So, Madam Speaker, what does the police do? The police has to take an immediate crackdown, attack with full force, island-wide searches, go after them. We must equip these very same teams, Honourable Member from Port-au-Prince South, with scanners, dogs, metal detectors. Give them the tools. Let them pursue and go after the criminal element, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we must provide the funding for them. Let's take the fight to the criminals. Let's not wait for the criminals to fight us. So, Honourable Member, I hope that you pass that message on and we can get somewhere. So, Madam Speaker, I think the 5 minutes that I have left, I want to make a suggestion in terms of dealing with crime, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister, as a member of this opposition, I will continue to hold every Minister of Government to account for their ministry. I will continue to hold the government in charge of the future of this country. But the Prime Minister is the leader of this nation, Madam Speaker. He carries a heavy responsibility for the welfare and the safety of every citizen. In that spirit, Madam Speaker, I am prepared to work beyond any line, anyone, to grant the Prime Minister the authority that he needs to provide our protective institutions with the legislative tools that is required to combat and suppress crime in this country. And if the legislation can come with the protection for our citizens, their constitutional rights, and it could stand the test of the judiciary, I am prepared to consider it, Madam Speaker. But I want to tell the Prime Minister that this is not about him. This is about Trinidad and Tobago. This is not about the leader of the opposition, because the buck stops with the Prime Minister. He has to make it happen, Madam Speaker. And I do not make this statement out of any love or admiration for the PNM as a political organization. And I neither make it because some misinformed person say that I, as a PNM operative, come to mash up a party. I ain't doing that. Madam Speaker, I am lucky. I'm doing it because I am lucky. I am lucky because I am luckier than the 500 people that lie dead today because of gun violence in this country. I am lucky because my family has never had a home invasion, a gun stuck by their neck. I am fortunate. And you see what I don't want for you and your family, Madam Speaker? I don't want for mine. And it is for that single reason that if something is presented, we have a duty to act in accordance for the well-being of this country. Madam Speaker, I acknowledge that we have imperfections, but I also recognize how far we have come and how far we need to go as a young republic. I believe in this country, Madam Speaker. I believe in our resilience, our intelligence. I believe in our ability to recognize that doing the right thing is easy. Doing the wrong thing is hard. Madam Speaker, I have made my stance clear. I am willing to put Trinidad and Tobago above everything else, above partisan politics, above any type of politics that will cause another toddler to be shot, another pensioner to be robbed, another family to face any type of violation, Madam Speaker. So with those few words, this may very well be my swan song. Let the chips fall where it may. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.